in Korea, where leaders have been in charge for so long in the economy. They are not willing to give this up, and they're not embracing new ideas, so in that sense they wouldn't be that ready.
We are living in a society where everything is changing constantly, so the skills that they have today might not work tomorrow.
I think the economy in 20 years will be transformed in a way that people are pushed to upgrade their skills.
I think my job position is pretty secure, but thinking about 5 years, for example, I really don't know what to expect.
That's definitely a scary factor, the feeling that you have worked so hard to get somewhere, and then the feeling that you're substitutable by machines.
I think jobs related to negotiation, empathy, and also innovation and creativity will be still very valued.
Well, thank you, and thank you again to St. Gallen for another invitation to moderate sessions here. As you just heard from those short videos, there is a lot of individual anxiety and uncertainty about the future of growth and what the role will be of human individuals within that future. We've already heard this morning about some of the growth challenges, lagging growth in developing economies, China, Brazil among them. Deflationary pressure in Europe is an issue. And of course, innovation and disruption, although generally held to be a good thing, does create that element of fear among some individuals who fear that they're going to be the ones disrupted away in the striving for growth. We are, as you may note, a homogeneous panel, and I want to address that directly with a vote at the beginning of this session, which we may come back to later to discuss. Why is there no woman on the panel? You have 6 options, including white male supremacy, which you might say is amply demonstrated by our presence here. This is relevant to growth, I think, and we may come back to it, as I said, if only because any business that is not reflecting the wide diversity of the potential workforce is essentially hampering its ability to grow and develop in future. And I think that's the vital element of future diversity, whether it be gender balance or ethnic balance. Anyway, we will return to this if you could vote while we're introducing the panel, who, from my left, are Christoph Franz, who's now chairman of Hoffmann-La, David Rothschild, executive chairman of Rothschild & Co. Group, Peter Brabeck, chairman of Nestlé, and Nils Andersen from Møller Mærsk. Essentially, in this debate about whether we have more fun and less stuff, you are confronting a panel of the people who make the stuff, finance the stuff, and ship the stuff around the world. So it'd be interesting to know whether they see a future in less stuff. But I'd like to start with Christoph first, which is to ask, and I'll ask this to each of the panelists, where you see future growth coming from. Christoph.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Basically, we have seen in the introductory remarks of the correlation of wealth with longevity, so span of life, that there is a huge opportunity, particularly for the pharmaceutical industry. We have many countries where the average age is still at 50 years. Here in Switzerland, we are talking of beyond 80 years. So there is a lot of room for improvement, and there are many factors contributing to this improvement, but an essential factor is medical innovation, and bringing this innovation not only to the happy few, but bringing it to all those people who need it worldwide. So creating access to innovative medicine, and for us, this is a huge source of growth in the future. So there are plenty of opportunities ahead.
Okay, we'll come back to the innovation question in a second. David, where do you see future growth happening?
Well, I think it's a difficult question, and it needs a long answer because it can come from various sources. But I don't want to be polite to Franz, but if I had decided before to answer that if I had to give one sector where I think a lot of growth will still come from is healthcare. For a variety of reasons, which is not only the progress of science, but also the progress of technology, which plays a key role in the development of healthcare. Now, I'm in a very popular industry, banking. As you know, everyone loves bankers in today's world. So I have to say just two quick words about our industry. If you talk to the banking business as a whole, it has destroyed jobs in 2008, 2009 massively, and probably still continues to destroy jobs. It certainly was the cause of a recession in 2009, but one has to nevertheless face the fact that there are some decent and good people in the bank, in banks generally speaking, and that lending is obviously a factor that promotes growth. We're in a world where interest rates are very low, and therefore it's very appealing to borrow. One of the issues of the world today is that as there's a lot of debt around, and one should never forget that at some point debt has to be paid back, there's a limit to what the lending business can do in terms of increasing growth. And I think I'll stop there now.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't want to talk about growth coming from our business because that is too sort of self-centered.
Right. Well, I might press you on it later if we get back to the banking question. Peter, where do you see growth coming from? You're obviously facing head-on these deflationary pressures in Europe, among other things. Where is actual growth happening?
Well, perhaps before I tell you this one, let me just react to what I heard all this morning, especially Professor Tim Jackson. I think he used emotionally, of course, a wonderful picture of nature. But if he had looked a little bit more into nature, he wouldn't have said that he can imagine a future without growth. Because nature clearly has indicated to us, when you stop growing, you start dying. And I cannot imagine that our society is now just starting to die. So growth is inherent. It is absolutely necessary. The question is not whether we should be growing. I mean, this stuff I thought with the Club of Rome, we had this behind us. The question is, how can we have a worthwhile growth? And that's a completely different question. So that's the first part, because I think it's important. I felt this thing was still in the room, and I wanted to get this out. Now, if I give you only the speech I give to my management, and then later on perhaps I give you the speech I would give to politicians, the management is very clear. We never had, in the last 50 years, as long as I have been in business, such a good growth perspective than we have now. Between 1980 and 1990, when I started, total growth was 2.8%. 1990 to 2000 was 3.2%. Then we had a short period of 10 years where it was 3.6%, and now we're at the 3.2%. So don't come and tell me that we cannot grow. The first thing, it's not because the media all talks about this, we are not growing as much. The reality is, overall economy is growing better than it was growing in the 20 years before the century, the first part of it. Secondly, we have a growing demography, which is a fact, which we cannot neglect. We are going, when I was born, we were 2.5 billion people. When I started to work, 5 billion. Now we are 7 billion people. We are going to be 9 billion people. This is growth. These people have to eat. These people are going to consume. So demographic-wise, very clearly. Secondly, urbanization. 60% of the people are going to live in cities. They need to be fed. They need to be taken care of. So another growth objective. And I can go on. I mean, I just cannot see where all this negative talk about growth is coming from. The question is not about whether we should growing, that we will growing. We will grow. I have no doubt about it. The question is whether our growth model, the way we have it today, is sustainable. And there my answer is no.
Can I just challenge you on the growth point? I mean, there is another expression from nature about trees cannot grow to the sky. There is a limit, even within nature, to growth. Is it right for companies like Nestlé to pursue that growth in competition with others until there is no further growth possible, or growth has growth has destroyed some of the natural advantages that we have. I mean, is there a point at which you can advocate holding back on growth in order to make it worthwhile? Because these two things may be mutually exclusive.
But there's an incumbent mistake. It's not because we have a growth model which is much too resource intensive that we have to give up growth. We have to change the growth model. We have to have growth which is less resource intensive. And this is a management issue. Okay? So I mean, in the afternoon I will be talking about water. Our water issue is a water management issue. It's not a water issue. Okay? So in the same thing, by saying, because our actual growth model is so resource intensive, we cannot afford to have growth. That's a fallacy. Change the model. Make it less resource intensive. And we have all the possibility to do so.
Okay, we'll come back to the worthwhile growth issue. Nils, I think in February you said that this conditions for your business were worse even than they had been after the financial crisis. So you have in a sense, a barometer for international trade through the shipping business. What are you seeing, and where is growth coming from?
Yeah, I think actually I agree with Peter, because it's, I mean, growth is still there. We just have to look in the right places. So if you take, we had a discussion this morning about what happens with the internet when people stop going to shops and buy via the internet. Job disappears in the shops, and people lose their jobs. But the reality is that you order something on the internet, but that doesn't mean that the goods miraculously come out of the electricity system and you have beers or whatever you want to have delivered electronically. Somebody has to pack what you order, somebody has to deliver it. One day it may be robots, for the next many years it'll be people, and that creates much more jobs to distribute than it does actually to when the consumer goes to the shop and picks himself or herself. So I think there are lots of opportunities in the technological development, but also in general. We have a world where there's a shortage of many things, and many of the shortages will grow. We live longer. Of course, pharmaceutical, medtech industries have tremendous opportunities to develop. Maybe the drop in prices will be so that they don't make more money. You never know. I mean, competition and authorities will impact that. But yes, there is an opportunity for additional services. We have a number of more people in the developing countries. They will need to eat, they'll need to drink. They also would want to have electricity for their phones and so on. Yes, you need power. I think the amount of growth opportunities in the world have never been greater. We are, as industrial leaders, of course, we're looking worried at the world because there are a lot of interruptions. 5 years ago, I would probably not spend a lot of my working day being afraid of being interrupted in some area. I'm not too worried today either, but I probably should be. So people are holding back because we know that the machines we buy today, well, maybe in a year's time, they will be outcompeted by something that has a little more technology or is a little cheaper and so on. You take the solar energy solutions where, you know, whatever you installed 2 years ago is obsolete today. So these are the things that are holding back from people investing. But the needs and the growth opportunities, I agree with Peter, they've never been better.
Can I ask, just within your company, how you assess these future growth companies? I mean, one thing is to look at your own business. What are you doing internally to predict longer range scenarios?
Well, we spend a lot of time, of course, predicting future energy markets because we're in energy. We spend time and money predicting future transport flows. And we see growth. I think the problems we see is not so much about finding the growth, it is about defining the business models that enable us to profit from them. Just to give you an example, transportation, the need for container transportation has grown over the last 3 years consistently 2-3% per year. But the drop in prices have been so much that our top line has not grown. So, and that is a reflection of competition, of new ways to operate. And so the problem is much more in business model definitions, I think, than in finding growth opportunities, because they are there. They're demographically driven, and the 3% or 2.5% global growth is not too bad.
Right. To switch back across to Christoph, the ability to innovate sufficiently to get levels of growth. Clearly, innovation involves a certain amount of risk-taking, like all business. You're making decisions about what to bet on and what not to bet on. In something as long-range as healthcare, do you have ways of detecting these trends and to be able to bet in the right places? And clearly, you've also got a regulatory regime to take account of that might throw you block some promising development that you have put money on.
Essentially, our business is not, it's not nice to have innovation, but it's a question of survival. If you are in the research-based pharmaceutical industry, you are a big risk taker. 9 out of 10 drugs in clinical trials will fail. So that means that everything you are doing is a kind of a bet in that sense. So we have to basically manage these huge risks by placing enough bets, and then basically, not guessing. Sometimes you are even praying, but hopefully you have the better scientific insight to place the right bets on the right technology, on the right molecule, having the better understanding of the biological mechanisms in the human body than your competitors. But it is a very risky business, and this is exactly reflected also in the end of the day. If you are successful, the margins you have to achieve in order to be an attractive investment. So if we regulate this industry, particularly if we regulate patent-protected drugs down, then we will have a different speed of innovation. And this is not a question we could not live with, but it's probably a question of society. How much innovation, what is the speed of innovation we want to have in society?
Right. I mean, one of the things that is implicit in the discussion about worthwhile growth is that it should be sustainable and for the long term. And obviously you and David are in businesses that are family controlled and come from strong family foundations. Is that a help in allowing you to make these long-term decisions? And I'll perhaps come over then to Peter to talk about the pressures of shareholder ownership when there is that shorter-term horizon.
Clearly, in the pharmaceutical industry, it is a big help, since it takes around 10 years from the invention of a certain drug or medicine till the moment when you are successful to bring it to the market. So you have to have a long-term perspective, and family ownership helps a lot, because it's not about the next quarterly result, it's not even about the annual result. It is about handing over the family ownership to the next generation. So the family is thinking in terms of 20, 30 years if you are in charge, and myself not being the owner, I am clearly in the role of a kind of a steward of this philosophy to help keeping the company as one of the top pharmaceutical companies also in 5, 10 or 20 years time. And this is clearly something which fits very well with the cycle, the business cycle of our industry.
Right. David, a brief thought about 200 years of family history and the usefulness of that in your business?
Two words for 200 years.
Yes.
Look, it's true that there's sort of, I'd say, a concept of longevity which helps create some stability in the environment. I also think that one of the complexities in a family business is to find the balance between cautiousness, which obviously means preservation of the business, but at what point are you going to take risk that helps create growth, and with a bet on, can I go as far as that because it's my money is not interesting, but the family you represent and whose interests you defend, which is sometimes a difficult call. You also, in a family business, for those who are not in the business, it happens in many families, have to distribute a dividend. And then you have also a debate about, do I want to reinvest my profits in order to develop, or do I distribute to keep the family happy? So it has some constraints, but it's true that if you take a long-term perspective, it makes sense and it's probably lower risk.
Right, and this cautiousness, does a family get more cautious the longer its business survives, do you think?
Not necessarily, because there's no linear development in a family business. And if you look 200 years, you've had periods of where you are, at the top of the mountain, and then a period where you are completely in the dumps, and then you have to start again. So in fact, it's never linear. It goes up and down. So you've got to just be clear about the cycle in which you are and how you operate in that cycle.
Right. Peter, let me ask a bit about that short-term, long-term, because I think it goes to your point about worthwhile growth. It's not worthwhile if you're simply draining the resources for the short term. Yeah. But you've clearly got shareholders, some of whom have short-term horizons that you have to deal with. How do you strike that balance? I mean, how do you win the trust of shareholders to be able to say, look, I'm doing something which is going to involve hefty investment in the first part of this cycle and later is going to repay your patience?
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental question, and this question is putting in danger our public company model, frankly speaking. I mean, if we are talking about something that is not growing, it's a public company. In today's world, 60% of the economic development of the economic activity is in the hands of non-public company. This goes back every single year. Reason for that is the short-term pressure, which is coming not only from the shareholders, which is coming, the regulatory pressure, which is coming from the politicians. I mean, in the old time, it was that politicians were long-term oriented and business was short-term oriented. Today, you have politicians being extremely short-term oriented and businesses trying to be long-term oriented. They have to be long-term oriented. In our specific case, what we did, we provoked a discussion with our shareholders by changing the bylaws of the company. We included in the bylaws, in the objective of the company, that this company has been created in order to create long-term shareholder value. And that's, if you invest into Nestlé, that's what you're going to get, long-term shareholder value. So if the hedge funds and the other short-term funds, they want to play around, well, I cannot prevent them to doing it, but when they come to me and say, why don't you have quarterly profit statements, which we don't have? Why do you not perform better on a quarterly basis? I say, look, you invested in the wrong company. That's not the way we are running our company. And I must say, we have today a shareholder base which is more and more long-term oriented, which is encouraging us, which is criticizing us, for example, for making share buybacks. And I'm thankful to them. They say, look, share buybacks is somebody for the hedge funds. It's not for us. We thought we are investing in a long-term company. Right. So I think it is very important, the way how you present and what your values are, and stay for your values. And then afterwards, you will get those shareholders which corresponds to your values.
Do you think you have the shareholders that correspond to your values
I feel very comfortable. I mean, if you get shareholder letters, and I get quite a lot of shareholder letters from my biggest shareholders, who are congratulating us that we are not making quarterly statements, who are telling us that our Creating Shared Value initiative is very good, that our social commitments we have to be part of our yearly report, that they are telling us that we shouldn't make a share buyback. Well, I think we are getting the right shareholder base, yes.
Right. Nils, how do you reconcile this kind of obviously long-term demand for growth, which owners will have mostly, with the short-termism of markets?
We don't reconcile it because we only go long-term.
Right.
When we order a ship, it takes 3 years to get it delivered, and it serves 30 years. So taking short-term decisions in that space is simply not possible. Of course, we fight for market share in the short term, and we compete in the markets, but we have to make sure that the decisions we make are are long-term the right ones. They're not always. I mean, we make mistakes as often as everybody else, but there we have the advantage that we are a foundation-controlled company. So we have a family foundation that controls the company, and that allows us to take these long-term bets and also occasionally go wrong. In order to, let's say, make sure that we also keep our focus on short-term performance, because of course we go for cost and all these things at the same time, we are also on the stock exchange. So you can say we have to balance, make sure we operate well, and taking the right long-term decisions. So I wouldn't call it reconciliations, because what drives the company is exclusively long-term. But of course, the operational skills and effectiveness is something that we have to demonstrate to the market every day, but it doesn't really impact the right long-term decision.
Right. Let me turn to the point that was raised in introducing the session, which is the people in your businesses. I mean, clearly there is, as I said, anxiety about what's coming, automation, an issue I'm going to talk to Martin Ford about on stage later this afternoon with the rise of the robots. How are you individually reassuring your people? Can you reassure your people when you might, at some point, any of you have to take a decision that says future growth is dependent on us further automating things that have in the past been carried out by a range of different people on the line? I'll start maybe back with you, Nils.
Yeah, I think first of all, people are super intelligent, at least our employees are. And you cannot reassure them about something that they can see will not come true in practice. We don't give job guarantees or say this is never going to change. We have changed dramatically over the last years. We've taken advantage of every opportunity there was to automate and reduce expenses that way. But it hasn't resulted in a drop in the number of people employed in the company, because essentially we've then grown other services, but not with the same people. But you cannot protect individual jobs. You can just protect, or you can't protect people. You can ensure that your growth opportunities.
Right.
So we try to be very straight and upfront about it, and people accept it. And if we make sure that they are upskilled, well-trained, and prepared for the future, they'll get great jobs elsewhere.
Christoph, can I shift across to you on the same question of the people, of what are you telling your anxious employees about the future in a more automated world in particular?
That's very simple. Tell them the truth, as Nils has mentioned. I think we are in a faster and faster changing business environment, and those companies who want to provide attractive jobs long-term have to be extremely flexible and adapt to changing environments. Take the example of big data. We have decoded the human genome, 3.5 billion base pairs per genome. So this is an exploding wealth of information which we use then to create better medicines on the one hand side, but in order to do it, you do not need only chemists or biologists, so we need people who have this IT qualification all of a sudden. There is a new mindset, a new training, a new type of employees you need on this side. On the other side, when it comes to manufacturing, and given the high safety standards of drug manufacturing, you can imagine we have a high interest to use automation as much as possible in order to make this happen, so we will have less employees here. The target is the same for all of us. We want to have an overall growing workforce with attractive jobs, but it means adapting fast.
Right, David, briefly.
No, I think your question touches a very important subject. We work for companies who were prosperous and are going through a very difficult time, and where you see a lot of people being laid off, and companies who are new or not new, but who are in the right, if you want, circle of economic development and technology, who are doing very well, very well. And this creates a challenging question for all corporates who are in today's world, which is that growth will continue, probably globally, but there will be the leftovers and those who do very well. And as the leftovers suffer, you will have more and more pressure from the politicians on fighting against profits, fighting against high salaries, making the life of business more and more difficult than it has been in the past, because there's less and less tolerance for the discrepancies. And that is a clear environment in which we will operate, and I think we have to keep this in mind.
Right. Peter, do you have a message that you give to your workforce when these questions come up, or even perhaps a policy that you pursue when you're asked to automate something that will lead to, inevitably, to some job disruption?
I think the first one brings me back to what I said before. If you are not able to convince your own workforce that you will be growing into the future, you have a problem. You have to be able to tell your workforce, we have the possibility to grow. Now, perhaps the jobs are not growing as fast as a company might grow. That's a different story. But if you are starting to tell the organization, my dear friends, as of from now, we are not growing, and by the way, we're going to automizing, which means that you have 50,000 people less, well, I cannot see how the people are really motivated to flourish like it was discussed before, okay? So you have to give them a vision that there is a possibility of future, of growth and things like this. And that's the most important part of it.
Right.
The second one is, of course, which also was mentioned before in the panel before, prepare them. When we introduced a worldwide, what we called global business excellence system, which was based on a unified IT system, the danger and the worry in our workforce, especially in developing countries, people who had, let's say, made a first education, suddenly they were confronted that in their daily work they would have to work with computers, with things like this. It was incredible. Now we trained them, and I can tell you one thing. I have never seen more motivated, more smiling people than when those people learned how to use modern technology. And the first thing they would show you, I went to a warehouse or something like this, the first thing they will show you, I can, you know? And that's it. Then you have full motivation. Then they're not afraid. So you have to prepare them.
Right.
And to give them a vision.
I'm going to open this out to the audience now. Yeah. I'd really like to get a wide variety of contributions from the floor, but it is quite difficult to see you from up here. Can we put the lights on in the house so I can just see who's got their hand up for questions? That's great. Okay. Yes, I see a lady right in the middle here. We're going to take as many as we can. So
hello.
Could you say who you are and where you're from?
My name is Maisha, and I'm from Singapore. Many educated women join the workforce but are compelled to leave due to the rigid structure that does not promote work and family balance. What measures do you propose to retain qualified and talented women in companies while allowing them to access top managerial positions as well as managing their families, since big multinational companies like yours can be the catalyst of change?
Thank you for that. We could put back the results of the poll here, which I think showed that 40.6% of you think it's because there are too few women at the top that there aren't more women on the panel. Nils, do you want to just take that one?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really important question. And in our company, we have a tradition of having mainly male persons in leadership. And some of the things we're doing is that we give people or women the opportunity to, when they go through maternity leave, first of all, having contact at the job while they're at maternity leave. And then when they come back, they have a year opportunity for a year to work 4 days, get 5 days paid, so that there's a gradual reintroduction. Because we find that most women actually leave because they want to have this life-work balance that, even though, I mean, in the past we said men and women are the same, it's not true. Women have different preference for family life. So we try to adjust to these things, and we fortunately see more women coming up through the ranks. but it takes quite a bit of time, and it's not something that can be done from one day to the other. It's a big challenge, but I think giving the women the opportunity to do part-time and get good maternity leave conditions and ensuring that they come back so we don't lose them is key.
Peter?
Yeah, I think like anybody else, of course, we are looking at that. First of all, in our industry, I must say, just to the inquiry, if I look around, we have in our industry top leaders. I mean, Indra Nouri, who is running Pepsi-Cola, Irene Rosfeld, who is running Mondelez, and so on. So we have, in our industry, we have women that are really on the top. And also in our company, for example, I mean, I have 4 women on the board. I have at least now, in the last time, 1 woman on the executive board. So the industry,
that's 1 woman
perhaps,
out of how many on the executive board?
Yeah, we have only 1 for the time.
How many are on the executive board?
13. So it's
Okay.
1 of 13. Yeah, but I will come now to this. I will come. But there's nothing wrong about it. Slowly.
And what are you doing to make that
Okay.
executive board
The
more?
question, I thought the question from the lady from Singapore was absolutely the right question. You see, she didn't ask about what are you doing about quotas or what are you doing about this. She was saying, what are you doing in order to maintain and give equal opportunity to qualified, talented women? And I think that's the real question. The answer to this is, what we are trying to do is, for example, we have introduced in Switzerland at the headquarters a butler system so that women are being helped in their house work. They don't have to take the laundry to the laundry sink. We have a butler who does it for her and things like this. We have introduced that the fathers have now a birth holiday so that they can help the woman at home so that she can go and come back to their job earlier than she wouldn't have done before. We have stilling places in every one of our factories and in every one of our offices. We have introduced for ladies, for example, a private transport from the airport from Geneva to her house after 10 o'clock at night, because we had many assaults on women at night in the trains and the public trains. So we are trying. I'm not saying this is all enough, but we are trying. The fundamental thing is always, how can we assure that we have equal opportunities for equal talent? I think that's important. There is one issue which is constantly disturbing, I would say, and one of the reasons why you do not have so many ladies going through all the procedures up. We are starting out with about 60% of all of our employees when they are being engaged are ladies. So we have a majority of ladies than we have of men. But when it comes in a multinational company to the transfers into different countries, which for our company is absolutely a necessity. You will not be able to run this company if you have not had experienced different cultures, different countries, different challenges. It is at this critical stage where normally we have a problem. There are very few men who are willing to accompany their wives to China or to Chile or to wherever it is. It is, for the time being, more easy to find women who are willing to give up their career and accompany their husbands. And this is really the only critical issue that we have identified. It's a question about this mobility that is necessary, and then this question about who in the family makes a sacrifice for whom. And for the time being, unfortunately, or fortunately, I cannot say, it is more that women are the ones who make finally the sacrifice than men.
Okay.
That's true.
Thank you. I would run along the panel, but I want to get some more questions and we might come back to this issue. Thanks for the very full explanation. Yes, I see somebody in the far... There we go.
Thank you. I have 2 questions.
Could you just do one question, please, and that way we'll get more questions.
More questions, maybe?
One question only.
Okay. Then I want to ask primarily the gentlemen that are representing the big house businesses. At what degree do you believe that the fact that Europe has become the avant-garde of patrimonial capitalism has contributed to the problem of stagnation as we're experiencing today? And I'm quoting Piketty on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think there's a representative of patrimonial capitalism on this panel. David?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what the question was. The question.
To what extent has patrimonial capitalism caused the problems that we're facing today? I'm paraphrasing a little.
Well, I mean, we're facing a lot of problems, so I think it would be first very unfair to think that they all come from patrimonial capital. I think you might find also in issues in Europe which are linked to regulation, to bureaucracy, to Brussels, to all sorts of different rules. So I think this is a slightly pessimistic statement. And you could also say in a way that patrimonial, I could reverse your question in a completely different answer and say that patrimonial capital is fighting to preserve its vital energy in business within Europe in spite of the constraints that have been built by the system in which we live. So I think that's the reality.
Thank you, David. Another question. There was one over here. Yes, the lady about 5 rows back here.
My name is Cordelia Chatin from Luxembourg. So I would like to know, how would you address the problem of increasing poverty and difference in social richness? The governments want to have more money. Are you ready to pay more taxes for that, to get social rights?
Okay, so, well, there's sort of two parts to that question. There's the inequality question and then tax as it plays into the inequality question. I'm going to throw it, this is what we call in English a hospital pass, to Christoph Franz.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it is our obligation to create attractive jobs, not only in the places where the company is headquartered, but all over the world. We are active in 150 countries, and we hope that we are able to provide jobs which bring people out of poverty. So this is this element of the good example, which is extremely important. Then with regard to a company like ours, health is obviously something which is very close to everybody's heart. And in this sense, we are very much exposed in developing countries with the fact that governments do not set up performing healthcare systems. Governments are not investing enough into healthcare of their population, and this is creating this access to medicines problem. And we have to address this, because most people then turn around and tell us, you have to give away more or less your drugs for free, which would be detrimental to the sustainability of our company. So we have to find solutions, and the solution clearly is creating partnerships. We have to bring our part to the table to help people getting out of a moment where they don't have the money to get access to their medicine. But we have to team up also with governments, and I think big companies can act as also some kind of lighthouse in countries to implement new business behavior, compliant business behavior, setting up the right ethics, providing equal opportunities, gender opportunity, and also providing attractive jobs and helping to solve the health issue.
Is there any value in paying more tax to governments and letting them do the decisions about how to reduce inequality?
Obviously, we are not creating the tax system, so we are exposed to the tax system. I have never met a company which voluntarily pays more taxes than you are obliged to pay. So, but in the end of the day, we are part of the society, and it is a governmental choice what is the tax burden and what is actually the amount of taxes being provided by companies, what is the amount of taxes provided by individuals. This is a societal choice, and we are clearly part of that choice, and we will pay the taxes which we have to pay. That is very easy in this framework of societal decision making.
Okay. Anyone else like to volunteer more tax?
Yeah, very simple. First of all, you get more tax when you grow. That's very clear. So if you at the same time want to have no growth, then don't expect more taxes. I mean, you cannot tax a company to 100%. So the best way to have more taxes is allow the companies and create an environment that the companies can grow. That's the first thing. The second one is, it's very easy always to talk about, I want more taxes. My answer would be, I'm more than happy to pay the taxes as long as government shows to me that they also improve their efficiency. Because you can increase the taxes all the time. If they don't increase the efficiency the way they're working, well, there will not be enough taxes. Okay? So it's always this one-sided approach to it, saying, yeah, you have to pay more taxes. Fine. We pay more taxes. Every year we pay more taxes. But what about the efficiency for those who receive these taxes? Nobody talks about this. Would be another very interesting subject.
There's also another.
The other thing is about, your statement into the air, which is, of course, reflecting a little bit the public mood, is increased poverty. Absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Never in the history of humanity have more people had access to the middle class than over the last 15, 20 years. Billions of people have moved out from extreme poverty into a decent middle-class life. So that we still have an unacceptable high level of poverty, it's a different story. But just to put into the room again and again, we have increased poverty. It's not true. I will challenge you on the next one. The increased inequality. It is not true. If you take the world as a whole, we have a much more equal society today than we had before. If you go into individual countries, then the statement of an increasing inequality over the last couple of years is true.
That's true.
But if you look at the globally, and we have a lot of young students, they must have seen the charts very clearly. We had before an inequality level which was huge between the developed countries and the developing countries. And this huge inequality, which had the shape of a camel, has moved to become a shape of a dromedar. We are much better today, we are much more equal on a global basis. Individually, in country-wise, it's true that we have a higher inequality ratio.
Okay. More questions. Leaders of tomorrow. I know without looking at Twitter that some of you are seething about this panel. So there's a lady at the back with white on there at the back. Is there a microphone that far down?
See if it works.
Thank you very much. I'm Océane from Switzerland. And the World Economic Forum declared climate change as the biggest threat to the global economy, like the failure in mitigating climate change. So it obviously also threatens your business. And I was wondering if how you face this threat, if you see that as a threat, and if you feel ready to decarbonize your business, since it's exactly what is needed if we want to not fail in mitigating climate change. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's an elephant in the room that we haven't yet addressed. I think, Nils, you have ships going around the world, presumably pumping out emissions.
I'll try to answer that because I'm probably the incarnation of the devil in the room in this respect. Because what we do as a company, we produce oil and we service the oil industry, and we'll continue to do that as long as there's a need for oil, for sure. We also run the biggest container fleet in the world, and when all this talk about environment change started back in, well, let's say 6, 7, we were frequently in the papers as emitting more CO2 to the atmosphere than the economy of Denmark or the country of Denmark. It's not relevant because we operate globally. But anyway, we took it quite seriously, and we embarked on a program at that time to reduce CO2 emissions from shipping with 20%. We wanted to do that from 2007 to 2020. We reached our target in 11, so we said, okay, we'll do 40% instead. And we reached that in 2014, and now our objective is to cut carbon emissions from shipping with 60% by 2020 compared to the 2007 objective. I think that shows that you can do really a lot of things when you put your mind to it. And in our case, it was a fantastic experience because we got our whole company motivated by it. So everybody wanted to save the planet. Of course, for us, it was doable because it also saved a lot of fuel, so it also helped the bottom line and is today the most important thing in the toolbox. And the reason why I take this long excursion around the subject is that we have to make it, for companies to engage in this, we have to make it economically sustainable. Because no company can take economic decisions that are against its own interest or put its life at risk, as Christoph Franz said before. So we have to create mechanisms that makes it attractive for companies to contribute to the fight against climate change. And there are positive ones to develop new technologies, enabling us to invest in new ways of creating energy. And there are, of course, the negative ones, which are punishing those who emit too much CO2. So I think this is probably the most important issue that the world is facing at the moment. And I think every responsible company will be able to give you some kind of answer. We are all trying to deal with it as much as we can.
What about the irresponsible companies? Are there competitors who can go on behaving in the same way and still making more money on the back of irresponsible lack of investment?
That is why, and fortunately not all our competitors are irresponsible. Most of them, but not all of them. But I think the key is here that you can ask companies to react in their own interest, and you can direct their own interest in a certain way. You cannot go out and ask companies to destroy themselves. So you have to make it possible for the responsible companies to compete or even out-compete the irresponsible ones.
Right. Oh, yes.
Actually, just to add one element, the question which has been asked here is a question which we receive inside our companies by our employees. So the issue of addressing this issue is not only an issue of people don't want to do this or leadership teams are thinking in different directions. We also have our families in the leadership teams. We all have our employees questioning us, challenging us. So there is a own genuine interest, which we should not underestimate, that we will try to contribute to this climate challenge in our corporations. But we should also be fair. This has to be linked with the economics of our companies. And there are some companies like the transportation companies, I know this from my airline time, who have intrinsically a huge interest to reduce fuel consumption. There are other companies where this is kind of an add-on. In the pharmaceutical business, to take an example, we have a clear policy to reduce our hydrocarbons by 90%, which we have nearly achieved. And this is cost, and we are not talking about a single-digit millions, but more than a billion to invest, and it's pure cost. But we feel that we have to do it.
David,
no,
briefly.
I just want to say that I was looking at the other day at a show on TV. In France relating to innovation, and they showed a robot that will go into offices because you have, coals and coughs and things like that last much longer than when I was younger, which shows probably that we live in offices that are more polluted by the atmosphere, and those robots are going to measure the degree of pollution, and then they're going to clean the air and recycle it into the office. So the possible of not only macro initiative but micro initiative is ahead of us fairly soon.
Great to end on a technological note of some optimism, at least. I'm sorry we weren't able to take more questions. I think most, if not all, of the panelists are doing work sessions later today. So if you wish to pick up some of these issues directly with individuals, please sign up for those. And in the meantime, please thank our panel for their contributions, and thank you for yours.